Welcome to TaNaCh Talk. I'm your host, William Hall. I clicked that button too soon. William Hall, broadcasting live out of Kingsland, Texas, USA, with another episode of TNT's, actually the Judaism and Christianity, a contrast on the TNT folder of the YouTube channel. So, Rabbi, welcome back. It's always a pleasure.
Good to be back.
Good to have you back. Good to have you back, no doubt. So we're going to go into Chapter 9. Chapter 9 last week I missed. I had to go out of town, so we're doing that this week. So great to have you back, Sean.
Good to be back.
Awesome. So this week is going to be called The Messiah.
Yes. And do you still have the file with all the verses?
Probably not. I couldn't, since we couldn't get a hold of each other earlier, I kind of lost track of time.
It's my fault, not yours.
Well, not entirely. I kind of got into panic mode. I was kind of starting to worry about you, make sure you were okay. So, all right, good deal. All right, so it is, we'll pass this on to you. I'm going to look for that file. I know you sent it to me. I think you emailed it to me, right?
Yes.
Okay. Just go ahead and do your thing, and I'll get it downloaded and see if I can get some stuff up.
Okay.
Okay.
It's your thing. Get your thing. Do what you want to do. Okay, fine. All right. So this is the 9th chapter of my book. The title is The Messiah. And it's going to be a long one, I think. But first, the Jews and Christians both use the term Messiah. But you have to understand that what each faith means by the term Messiah, they're two totally different concepts. They are mutually exclusive, which means you can't believe in both at the same time. But you got to remember, number one, first and foremost, that the term Messiah is a Jewish term. Okay? First, it was a Jewish concept before there was even a Christian. Okay? So the word Messiah comes from the Hebrew Mashiach. Probably nothing I'm saying tonight is going to be new to anybody. But the word Messiah comes from the English Anglicization of the Hebrew term Mashiach, which means one who has been anointed. Okay. What does it mean to be anointed? It means picked by God, and the anointment is the designation of the person who, or as we'll see other things, that's been picked by God for a specific purpose.
So you'll be happy to know that I got the file and it's wide
Yay.
open already. All I got to do is I'm ready to share screen whenever you need me to.
All right.
Okay.
So the concept of the Messiah involves a Jewish man who comes to the Jewish people, who makes visible and tangible changes in the real world, okay, changes that any human being on earth can perceive with their own senses. The changes are defined by the Jewish people based on the Jewish interpretation of the Jewish Bible written in the Jewish language of Hebrew. So the term Messiah, Mashiach, is a completely, totally holy Jewish term that reflects a Jewish concept. And nobody has the right to change the meaning of the word, coined and used by the Jewish people. And here's the best example of it. And if you don't get anything else that I say, understand one thing. Electricians do not fix plumbing. So let's say that you're in your house and it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Sunday and you're reading your book when all of a sudden half the lights in your house go out. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to check the switch of the light right above you, but there's nothing wrong with it. The next thing you're going to do is going to go to the wall switch and you're going to flip it up and down, but there's nothing wrong with it. Then you're going to go to the breaker box outside, but you're not going to find any of the breakers flipped. So you're going to go and find help. So you go to the telephone and you call an electrician. So about an hour later, the doorbell rings. You open the door and you see a man standing there with pipes and wrenches. And he says, "Hi, I'm the electrician you called. I'm here to fix your plumbing." So he breezes past you and comes into your house. And you say to him, wait, you don't understand. I have an electrical problem, not a plumbing problem. My plumbing is fine. I need an electrician to fix the electricity in my home, but it's too late. So he goes to the faucets all around the house, but there's nothing wrong with them. And then he goes to the toilets, but there's nothing wrong with them. And then nothing's changed when he leaves. So he leaves. And there's nothing different from before when he came. The same problems that are in your house are still there after he's gone. So about 10 minutes after he leaves, there's another knock on your door, and you open it up, and it's your next door neighbor. And your next door neighbor says, "Wow, that was Bill the electrician. Isn't he wonderful?" And you say, "Wait a minute, wonderful is what? Electricians don't fix plumbing. He tried to fix the plumbing, but there's nothing wrong with my plumbing. They haven't been changed since Bill the electrician was here. Nothing's been changed. I'm still with electricity. What is broken before he came still remains broken. But your neighbors insist that Bill is a fabulous electrician. Oh, don't worry about the electrical problem, they tell you. He's going to come back someday to prove to you that he was the electrician you're waiting for. And that's when he'll fix the electricity. But until then, you are supposed to believe that he was a great electrician." Finally, your neighbors are going to tell you, "You know something? You're the one with the problem. You must have a veil over your mind that prevents you from seeing the truth that an electrician is supposed to fix electrical problems." But that's not true, because you've got the wrong definition of the word electrician. The real purpose of an electrician is to fix plumbing. So someday you will see that he really was a great electrician, but until then, you really need to believe that he was an electrician. Now, like the electrician in my story, okay, Jesus came and went, and nothing in the world changed as a result, except the founding of religion based on him. And although we Jews created the term Messiah, we are told by Christians that our definition is the wrong definition. What the Christians expected from their Messiah, which they claim was Jesus, is what they claim we Jews should have been expecting all along, just as just as your neighbors thought that you should be expecting an electrician to fix the plumbing. In the same way that Bill the electrician came and went and the problems in your house haven't changed, so did Jesus come and go, and the problems in the world have remained even to today. Okay. Our Christian neighbors may tell us that Jesus was the Messiah, like our neighbors may tell us that Bill was a great electrician. But our definition, the original definition, truly the only definition of the term Messiah, hasn't been fulfilled. We still wait for the real Messiah to come, just like we would be if we were sitting in the dark. And just as, let's say, our neighbors tell us that there's going to be a second coming of Bill to change the, to fix the electrical problems you have, okay, so do Christians tell us that Jesus will return in a second coming to do all the things the real Messiah should have done in the first time around, okay? So we say, here's what a Messiah is. We say Jesus didn't fulfill the meaning of that term. Christians say, no. Here's the real meaning of the term, and therefore Jesus fulfilled the meaning of that word. Okay, two groups, each one has a different definition of the same word. Which of us has the same has the correct definition? Okay, now you could argue that if we in another group created a term independently of each other, and at the same time, then you could say that each of us has a right to our own definition. But that's not what happened. We had the term Messiah long before Jesus died and was buried. Okay, for people to come to us now and tell us that we have the wrong definition, it would be like somebody who doesn't speak English telling a native English speaker that a person who's an electrician is supposed to fix the plumbing. Again, as we've learned, the word Messiah from the Hebrew word Mashiach means anointed. To anoint something is to pour oil over it as a way of demonstrating that God has chosen it for a specific purpose or task in the world. Now, anything that's anointed is a Messiah, and in the Bible, many things and many people were anointed, so they are all Messiahs. So, for example, and here you can throw up the quotations, okay?
Okay, one second.
That's one.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. So, for example, all right, Exodus chapter 28, verse 41, Aaron and the priests are anointed, which means Aaron is a Messiah. The priests are Messiahs. And you shall put them upon Aaron your brother and his sons with him, and shall anoint them and consecrate them and sanctify them, that they may minister unto me in the priest's office. Okay, so human beings were anointed. Altars to God were anointed. Take a look at Genesis 28, verse 18. And Jacob rose up early in the morning and took the stone that he had put for his pillows and set it up for a pillar and poured oil upon the top of it. Or Exodus 29:36, and you shall offer every day a bullock for a sin offering for atonement, and you shall cleanse the altar when you have made an atonement for it, and you shall anoint it to sanctify it. So altars were anointed. Okay, the tabernacle, the Ark of the Covenant, and all the utensils used in the tabernacle and ark were also anointed. Exodus chapter 30, verse 26 and following. And you shall anoint the tabernacle of the congregation therewith, and the ark of the testimony, and the table and all its vessels, and the candlestick and its vessels, and the altar for incense, and the altar of burnt offering with all its vessels, and the laver, the washer, and the foot of it. And you shall sanctify them that they may be most holy. Whatsoever touches them shall be holy. Exodus 40, verse 9. And you shall take the anointing oil and anoint the tabernacle and all that is therein. Leviticus 8:10, and Moses took the anointing oil and anointed the tabernacle and all that was therein and sanctified them. You also have unleavened bread, priests, kings that were anointed. They were messiahs. Leviticus 2:4, and if you bring an oblation of a meat offering baked in the oven, it shall be unleavened cakes of fine flour mingled with oil, or unleavened wafers anointed with oil. Exodus 30, verse 30, and you shall anoint Aaron and his sons and consecrate them, that they may minister unto me in the priest's office. 1 Samuel 15:1. Samuel also said unto Saul, the Eternal sent me to anoint you to be king over his people, over Israel. Now therefore hearken unto the voice of the words of the Eternal. 1 Samuel 16:13. Then Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brethren, and the Spirit of the Eternal came upon David from that day forward. So Samuel rose up and went to Ramah. Okay, so you've got things anointed. You know, that thing or a person was a Messiah. Okay, the Messiah is a specific term invented by the Jewish people. It's a Jewish concept based on the Jewish interpretation of the Hebrew scriptures, the Jewish Bible written in the Hebrew language, the Jewish language, about a specific Jewish man who comes to the Jews and who makes real, visible, provable changes in the real world, the world you can see outside your window. The Messiah is a title that indicates a specific job. It's the job for which he's been anointed. So, what is the Christian definition of the word Messiah? Christians believe that the Messiah is someone who is actually God, who is born of as a human being on earth, with a human being as a mother and God for a father, who died for the sins of humanity. Now, you're going to tell me, yeah, this denomination doesn't believe Jesus was God. That denomination doesn't believe Jesus was God. Doesn't matter. The purpose and function was to die for the sins of humanity. You ask any Christian, what did Jesus do for me? What did Jesus do for you? And they will tell you he died for my sins. So the main function of being the Christian concept of a Messiah is that the Messiah dies for the sins of the people. To Christians, Jesus was a blood sacrifice they believe to be necessary for the forgiveness of sins. These sins are both those that we commit by our actions, but also the state of sinfulness that one is in simply by being human. Okay, original sin is what they call it. Okay, now, for everything I just said, there's a lot more that you have to believe above and beyond the simple statement Jesus was the Messiah. You have to believe that God became a human being, or that a human can be God. You have to believe that one person is allowed to die for the sins of another, and that needs clarification. You have to believe that there needs to be a blood sacrifice for the forgiveness of sins, or else nobody has to die. There's a whole theology behind the statement that Jesus was the Messiah according to the Christian definition of Messiah. Okay, and Other videos based on other chapters of my book deal with each of these unbiblical beliefs. You got to understand that the Christian definition of the term Messiah has a greater connection to the beliefs of the pagans in the ancient world and their beliefs regarding their dying, saving man gods. Okay? And they define Messiah, dying, saving man God, exactly the way pagans did some of their gods. Born in the winter, died in the spring, came back to life, believe that their followers would not die if they accept that and they'll have immortal life because the god's death acted as a sacrifice for the people. The pagan world was also filled with gods who were the product of a human mother and a god, usually Zeus, for a father. And as we've discussed in other places in my book and on these videos, okay, Hercules, his mother was the human woman Alcmene, and his father was Zeus. Dionysus' mother was the human Semele, and his father again was Zeus. And there are plenty of instances, in the ancient pagan idolatrous world where the god or semi-god or demigod had a human mother and a god for a father. Okay. By the way, pick up the New Testament and read it, and you'll see that when the earliest Christians came into the synagogues to proselytize, they were kicked out. They were not allowed to stay and preach. They were rejected because their message was pagan, because the Jews in the ancient world in the synagogues recognized their message as having a lot more to do with paganism than anything in Judaism, and they were removed and separated from the Jewish people as a result. Okay, you can see that Jews recognized paganism and Christian theology in early Christian writings outside of their New Testament. So, two operative terms, ancient books. One is by Justin Martyr, who died in 165. He wrote a book called Dialogue with Trypho. Trypho was modeled on the Jews of Justin Martyr's day. And when he wrote the book, Dialogue with Trypho, he put into Trypho's mouth objections to Christianity with which he, Justin Martyr, was familiar. So if you go anywhere on the internet, type in Dialogue with Trypho, okay, and you're going to come to the 67th chapter, 67th chapter of Dialogue with Trypho, and it's called Trypho Compares Jesus with Perseus. Okay, Justin Martyr writes that Trypho objected to Christianity by saying, quote, "Moreover, in the fables of those who are called Greeks, it is written that Perseus was begotten of Danae, who was a virgin. He who was called among them Zeus, having descended on her in the form of a golden shower." So golden shower doesn't make you lose your virginity. It's a virgin birth. And he continues, "And you ought to feel ashamed when you make assertions similar to theirs, and rather you should say that this Jesus was born man of men. And if you prove from the scriptures that he is the Messiah, the Christ, Christian concept, and that on account of having led a life conformed to the law and perfect, he deserved the honor of being elected to be Christ, fine. But do not venture to tell monstrous phenomena, lest you be convicted of talking foolishly like the Greeks." So as far back as Justin Martyr, who died in 165, you have this comparison of Christian theology with pagan idolatrous beliefs. Okay. Not only do you have this Jewish objection to Christianity in early Christianity, okay, found in Justin Martyr's book, Dialogue with Trypho. You also have it in as early as Origen. Origen was an early church father. He died in 254. He wrote his book called Contra Celsum, okay, which means against Celsum. And by the way, also, I believe chapter 67, okay, he's got the same objection to Christianity as being very similar to that of Perseus. Okay, so the recognition of the comparison between Christianity and paganism more than anything is what caused the split between Judaism and Christianity and between Jews and Christians. My opinion, take it for what that's worth, but I believe Christianity began to split off from Judaism very early, as soon as they started seeing Jesus as a dying, saving man God. And if you want to argue, oh, well, the man God didn't happen till later, doesn't matter. The dying, saving part was very early, and that alone could cause the split between Jews and Christians and between Judaism and Christianity. Okay? One other thing that I have to point out to you when comparing the Christian concept of Messiah with the Jewish concept of Messiah. Every single thing that Christians claim about Jesus, you cannot prove, and you can only accept those concepts on faith. For example, they claim because their New Testament wrote it that Jesus was born in Bethlehem. Did you see a birth certificate? They claim that Jesus saves everyone from the tortures of a hell. Show me the proof. They say that Jesus performed miracles, and they further claim that the Gospels are eyewitness accounts. Okay? Prove it. Show it to me. You have to take it all on faith, because you have to take the only record of Jesus, which is the New Testament, on faith. Okay? Does that mean that the eyewitness accounts in the Quran or the Vedas of Hinduism or the writings about the Gautama Buddha have to be believed because they were written down by supposed eyewitnesses? All those things that Christians claim Jesus did are not provable, but as we are going to see, every single thing we say the real Messiah will do when the real Messiah comes, you can perceive with your own senses. You can tell it's true, okay? One real quick obvious one, the one that majority of Jews all over the world know that the real Messiah will do when the real Messiah comes, is the Messiah will bring peace. You'll know if there's peace, okay? You will be able to perceive that the real Messiah has really come because you'll really be able to perceive with your real senses from the real world that he has come. But Christianity, everything they have about their Jesus is based on faith. Okay, first question is, who is the Messiah supposed to be? Second question is, what will he do when he gets here? All from the Jewish perspective. Who is the Messiah supposed to be? What does he do when he gets here? So first, the Jews have always defined the Messiah as somebody who's going to be a 100% human being, born of two human parents, who came into existence, shall we say, the normal way people come into existence, through the act of sex by their mom and dad. But Jesus, according to Christian theology, was born of a union between a human woman and God, rather than two human parents, as you can see in the book of Matthew, chapter 1, verse 18. Now, the birth of Jesus Christ was on this wise, when as his mother Mary was espoused to Joseph, before they came together, before they had sex, she was found to be with child of the Holy Ghost. The real Messiah is a direct bloodline descendant of King David. Just as someone who was not of the proper bloodline can't become King of England, someone who was not from the proper bloodline can't be the Messiah. Having a king for a father entitles you to inherit the throne. Currently, Prince Charles is, I don't know if he's been crowned yet, but he is next in line, if he's not already, the King of England. Okay? If he gave up the throne, for whatever reason, he said, I'm not going to be the king, okay? It's not his brother Andrew that inherits the throne. Instead, Charles' firstborn son, William, becomes the next king. Because David was a king, the lineage of kingship is promised only to David's descendants. That means that the Messiah must be a direct bloodline descendant of King David. Now, King David had many sons, one of whom was Solomon. And this Solomon is the one who became king of Israel after King David. So the Messiah not only must be a direct bloodline descendant of King David, the Messiah has to be a direct bloodline descendant of King David through David's son Solomon. How do we know this? Isaiah chapter 11, verses 1 through 10. But it's really verse 1 and verse 10, okay, that really shows this particular passage, this particular expectation. Okay, Isaiah 11, verse 1. Well, we'll read most of it. Okay, then we'll skip. And there shall come forth a rod out of the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. Who was Jesse? Jesse was the father of David. So the stem of Jesse is King David. And when it says, and there shall come forth a rod out of the stem, it means a descendant of King David. Now, if you jump down to verse 10, okay, Isaiah 11, verse 10, and in that day there shall be a root of Jesse. Again, Jesse is the father of David. The root is a descendant of David, which shall stand for an ensign of the people, and to it shall the Gentiles seek, and his rest shall be glorious. Okay. In the quotation we just read, David is the branch out of the roots and the stem out of the rod of Jesse, who was King David's father. Jesse was David's father. The rod is David, the stem is the Messiah. In the last verse, okay, the root of Jesse refers to the Messiah. These verses also indicate some of the specific things that are going to happen when the Messiah comes. Humans will become vegetarian and all violence on the earth will stop. So let's read through the whole thing, okay? And there shall come forth a rod out of the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. And the Spirit of the Eternal shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and of the fear of the Eternal. And shall make him a quick understanding in the fear of the Eternal. Really awe, but whatever. And he shall not judge after the sight of his eyes, neither reprove after the hearing of his ears, but with righteousness shall he judge the poor, and reprove with equity for the meek of the earth. And he shall smite the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips shall he slay the wicked. And righteousness shall be the girdle of his loins, and faithfulness the girdle of his reins. The wolf also shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the kid, and the calf and the young lion and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them. And the cow and the bear shall feed, their young ones shall lie down together, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox. And the sucking child shall play on the hole of the asp. What's an asp? That's the poisonous snake that killed Cleopatra. So a sucking child shall play on the hole of the asp, and the weaned child shall put his hand on the cockatrice, also sometimes called an adder, another poisonous snake, on the cockatrice's den. They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain, for the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Eternal as the waters cover the sea. And in that day there shall be a root of Jesse, which shall stand for an ensign of the people. To it shall the Gentiles seek, and his rest shall be glorious. Okay, so there are other quotations, okay, that talk about the world shall recognize that the Messiah when he comes, and he'll be a direct bloodline descendant of King David. All right. The phrase "for all the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Eternal" means that all human beings will become monotheists and believe in the one true God, accept the Jewish concept of God, accept the Jewish God, the only God as their God. None of this has happened. Just as the electrician didn't repair the problems in your home in my original story. Jesus didn't change the problems that exist in the real world. All the problems that existed before him still exist today. He did nothing to fulfill what it means to be the Messiah. And Christians admit this when they invent the need for Jesus to return in a second coming, which we'll get to in a little while. Okay, other quotations exist that explain that the Messiah is a direct bloodline of descendant. And take a look at Jeremiah 23, verse 5. Behold, the days come, saith the Eternal, that I will raise unto David a righteous branch, and a king shall reign and prosper, and shall execute judgment and justice in the earth. In Ezekiel 34, 23 to 25, and I will set up one shepherd over them, and he shall feed them, even my servant David. He shall feed them, and he shall be their shepherd. And I, the Eternal, will be their God, and my servant David a prince among them. I, the Eternal, have spoken it. And I will make with them a covenant of peace, and will cause the evil beast to cease out of the land, and they shall dwell safely in the wilderness and sleep in the woods. Ezekiel 37:25. And they shall dwell in the land that I have given unto Jacob my servant, wherein your fathers have dwelt, and they shall dwell therein, even they and their children, and their children's children forever, and my servant David shall be their prince forever. By the way, references to the servant David, descendant of David. Jeremiah chapter 30, verse 9. But they shall serve the Eternal their God, and David their king, whom I will raise up unto them. Jeremiah 33, 14 to 15. Behold, the days come, saith the Eternal, that I will perform that good thing which I have promised unto the house of Israel, to the house of Judah. In those days and at that time will I cause the branch of righteousness to grow up unto David, and he shall execute judgment and righteousness in the land. Notice it says branch of righteousness to grow up to David. Doesn't mean David is going to grow up. He's already come and gone. Okay. There are some Jewish interpreters who think that David will come back and be this Messiah. Still not Jesus. Okay. Hosea chapter 3, verse 4 to 5. For the children of Israel shall abide many days without a king, without a prince, and without a sacrifice, and without an image, and without an ephod, and without teraphim. Afterward shall the children of Israel return and seek the eternal their God, and David their king, and shall fear the eternal and his goodness in the latter days. Okay? Each one of these speaks of the time when God will establish his Messiah, and in every instance is either David or a descendant of David, and it really means a descendant of David who will reign. But Jesus' lineage can't go through his human father, because according to Christian theology, as Jesus' father was not Joseph, the husband of Mary, according to Christian theology, Jesus' father was God. So he can't trace his lineage through his human father back to King David in order to be the Messiah. So the real Messiah must be a direct bloodline descendant from King David. The Messiah also must be a direct bloodline descendant not only from King David, but through King David's son Solomon. And you can't be adopted into the Davidic line to become the Messiah. Oh, Joseph wasn't his biological father, he was the adopted father. Sorry, doesn't work. Okay, in Judaism, your lineage is inherited through your father. So traditionally, one is called up to the Torah for an aliyah of the Torah by your father's name. Stuart, the son of Tzvi. Shimon ben Tzvi. The idea that lineage is traced through your father goes back to the book of Numbers in the Torah, where God told the Israelites to take a census, but to count it through the fathers. Numbers chapter 1, verse 2. Take you the sum of all the congregation of the children of Israel after their families by the house of their fathers, with the number of their names, every male by their polls. The Messiah also must be able to trace his lineage through his human father. According to Christian theology, as I said, God is Jesus' father, so Jesus can't trace his lineage through a human father back through King Solomon to King David. Matthew and Luke both trace Jesus' lineage to Joseph, who was called the husband of Mary. However, they insist that God, not Joseph, was Jesus' father. If Joseph wasn't the biological father, then who cares what his lineage is? It never touches Jesus. Jesus doesn't have a bloodline descendancy through a biological father going back through King Solomon to King David. Okay, and again, some will say Jesus, well, he was adopted by Joseph. Okay, but even if you could say that that was true, Jesus couldn't be the Messiah because the Bible states that the Messiah must come from the body of King David. 2 Samuel chapter 7, 12 to 17. 2 Samuel chapter 7, 12 to 17. This is the prophet Nathan speaking to King David. You know, a lot of people in the Bible have the name Nathan. So this is the prophet Nathan speaking to David. And when your days are fulfilled and you will sleep with your fathers, I will set up your seed after you, which shall proceed out of your body. And I will establish his kingdom. He shall build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I will be his father, and he shall be my son. If he commits iniquity, I will chasten him with the rod of men and with the stripes of the children of men. But my mercy shall not depart away from him, as I took it from Saul, whom I put away before David. And your house and your kingdom shall be established forever before you. Your throne shall be established forever. According to all these words and according to this vision, so did Nathan speak to David. So what's going on here? First of all, he says that the people who are kings over the people of Israel have to be direct bloodline descendants from David, okay, from his seed proceeding out of his body, okay? After King David, that Nathan is speaking to, who is the king who actually built the house for God? Solomon. It's got to be Solomon. Okay, the following quotation also proves additional evidence that the Messiah must be a direct descendant of King Solomon. 1 Chronicles 22, 9 to 10. 1 Chronicles 22, 9 through 10. Behold, a son shall be born to you who shall be a man of rest, and I will give him rest from all his enemies round about, for his name shall be Solomon. And I will give peace and quietness unto Israel in his days. He shall build a house for my name, and he shall be my son, and I will be his father, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom over Israel forever. And what does the word Solomon mean? In Hebrew, it's Shlomo, Shalom, Shlomo, his peace. So when it says, he'll be a man of rest, I'll give him rest from his enemies round about, I will give peace and quietness unto Israel. It's talking about Solomon, who was the one, verse 10, who actually built a house for God's name. Okay? And when it says son and be his father, you can't take that literally because he's talking about David. So clearly, it's not some sort of, Jesus born of God person. Okay. Now, let's pretend for a moment that the lineage of Joseph could actually be used for the lineage of Jesus. Forget the fact that Joseph wasn't the biological father of Jesus. Okay? As we discussed a couple minutes ago, the lineage of the Messiah has to be traced through King Solomon back to King David. But the Gospel of Luke traces Joseph's lineage back to King David through another son, Nathan. That's not the prophet. That's another person with the name Nathan, who was the son of David and the half-brother of Solomon. Okay, as you can read in the verse from Luke, okay, Luke chapter 3, verse 31 and 32. Okay, this is the lineage in Luke 3 supposedly of Jesus. Which was the son of Meliah, which was the son of Menon, which was the son of Mattatha, which was the son of Nathan, the son of David. Shouldn't that be Solomon, the son of David? No, it says Nathan, the son of David. According to Luke, Jesus' ancestry, if you accept him being a proper descendant of Joseph. So let's just say the descendants of Joseph, the ancestry of Joseph, okay, it's the wrong son of David. Okay, it should say Solomon, the son of David. It says Nathan. So according to Luke, Joseph was a descendant of someone who couldn't be on the throne of King David. Okay, the son of Jesse, which was son of Obed, and it goes on from there. All right. So if the real Messiah is a descendant of King David's son Solomon, but Luke says that Joseph was a descendant of Nathan, the half-brother of Solomon, okay, that would be like saying that someone presently claiming the throne of England is a descendant of Andrew, the brother of Prince Charles, when everybody knows it's got to be through Prince Charles or Prince Charles's descendants. Okay, all right. That alone should be proof that Jesus can't be the Messiah. All right. Now, you've got King David, who has a son Solomon. Solomon took many wives, many concubines, whatever. He's got plenty of children out there, okay? But there was a descendant of Solomon who really God got angry at and said about that person that any one of that person's descendants cannot sit on the throne of David and rule over Judah, which the real Messiah will do. So if a person is a descendant of the people who were cursed, they can't be the Messiah. Okay, so certain people were cut off from being inheritors of the throne of King David. Jehoiakim was the name of a king who really made God angry. Okay, Jehoiakim was the son of Josiah. Josiah was a really honorable king. Okay, but one of his sons was Jehoiakim, and Jehoiakim and his son Jeconiah really made God angry. So take a look at 1 Chronicles chapter 3, verse 15 to 17. 1 Chronicles 3, 15 to 17. And the sons of Josiah were the firstborn Johanan, the second Jehoiakim, the third Zedekiah, the fourth Shallum. And the sons of Jehoiakim, Jeconiah his son, Zedekiah his son. And the sons of Jeconiah, Asir, Shealtiel his son. So from here, it goes from Josiah to Jehoiakim, from Jehoiakim to Jeconiah, and from Jeconiah to Shealtiel. Okay? Other verses in Jeremiah, by the way, explicitly state this curse placed on these descendants. Okay? Take a look at Jeremiah 22, verse 18, where it says, don't feel pity for these people. They got what they deserved. Therefore, this is Jeremiah 22:18. Therefore, thus says the Eternal concerning Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah. Do not lament for him, saying, oh, my brother, or oh, sister. They shall not lament for him, saying, oh, God, or oh, his glory. God declares that all of Jehoiakim's descendants are cursed, regardless of their individual worth. Okay? People act, and their actions have repercussions. And there's collateral. Okay? Jeremiah 22:24. As I live, says the Eternal, even if Coniah, the son of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, was the signet upon my right hand, I would pluck him away. So even if Jeconiah became a great king, sorry, Jehoiakim, ruined it for all of his descendants. Okay, here's the actual curse placed on Jehoiakim. Some say the curse is on Jeconiah. Doesn't matter. Point is it's a curse of this part of the lineage of David and Solomon. Jeremiah 22, verse 30. Thus says the Eternal, write ye this man as childless, a man that shall not prosper in his days, for no man of his seed shall prosper, sitting upon the throne of David and ruling anymore in Judah. So if you're a descendant of Shealtiel, if you're a descendant of Jeconiah, if you're a descendant of Jehoiakim, you can't be the Messiah because you're supposed to be able to sit on the throne of David and rule Judah, rule the world. So if you take a look in the Christian's New Testament, Matthew chapter 1, verse 11 to 12, and Luke chapter 3, verse 27, these are the places in the midst of the lineages of Jesus according to Matthew, lineages of Jesus according to Luke, and guess who they name? The cursed people whose descendants are not supposed to be able to sit on the throne of David and rule again in Judah. Excuse me a minute. Okay, so Matthew chapter 1, verse 11 and 12. Josiah begat Jeconiah and his brethren about the time they were carried away to Babylon. And after they were brought to Babylon, Jeconiah begat Shealtiel, and Shealtiel begat Zerubbabel. And Luke chapter 3 also mentions Shealtiel, which was the son of Joanna, which was the son of Risa, which was the son of Zerubbabel, which was the son of Shealtiel. So both lineages mention Shealtiel, who's part of the cursed line. Okay? Christianity knew there was a problem with the lineages according to Luke and according to Matthew, and they knew it from the beginning. This is why Paul tells the early Christians, remember the writings of Paul predate the Gospels. This is why Paul tells the earliest Christians, disregard the problems with Jesus' genealogies. So in 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 4, neither give heed to fables and endless genealogies which minister questions, rather than godly edifying which is in faith, do so. Just go with your faith. Don't go with printed. And Titus chapter 3, verse 9, but avoid foolish questions and genealogies and contentions and strivings about the law, for they are unprofitable and vain. Just ignore them. Now, there are those who will say that the curse on Jehoiakim and his descendants, that would include Jeconiah and Shealtiel, remembering Shealtiel is named by both Matthew and Luke, they'll claim that the curse was lifted because a descendant of his became the governor of Judea. However, the text of the curse states that his descendants will not sit on the throne of David. That means the curse means they will never have complete sovereignty like a king, not a governor, like a king over the promised land. A governor is appointed. A governor is appointed by a government other than his own. No descendant of Jehoiakim has ever had complete sovereignty, just as the curse promised. Okay? Take a look anywhere you see the word Zerubbabel. Okay? Zerubbabel? Yeah. Okay? It will say that he was governor of Judea. He's never the king. He was allowed to govern by Babylon. Okay. All right. So the Messiah, the real Messiah, the Jewish concept of the Messiah, is he's a bloodline descendant of King David through King Solomon without going through or being a part of the lineage of Jehoiakim, Jeconiah, or Shealtiel. All right. That's who the Messiah is to be. But what's his job? for which he's been anointed. What's his function? Okay. Anointed means picked by God and shown to be picked by God by being anointed. What's his job? Okay. Again, these can be viewed in the real world, changes that you can see, perceive, and prove through your own senses. Okay. Number one, heralding the Messiah, and with the same goals of the Messiah, Elijah appears. The Messiah has a specific job description, which the Bible explains in detail. Elijah the prophet is going to herald the coming of the Messiah, and obviously he's not going to be working against the goals of the Messiah. They're going to be working for the same goals together. Okay, so this verse explains that Elijah and the Messiah will bring families closer together. Malachi chapter 4, verses 5 through 6. Malachi 4, 5 through 6. Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Eternal, and he, Elijah, shall turn the heart of the fathers to the children. This is the task of Elijah the prophet, who is going to be doing the same kind of thing as the Messiah. Okay? Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Eternal, and he, Elijah, shall turn the heart of the fathers to the children, and the heart of the children to their fathers, or else I will come and smite the earth with a curse. What did Jesus say that Jesus' explicit purpose of coming was? If Jesus was the Messiah, and the Messiah and Elijah are supposed to have the same goals in mind, and Elijah is explicitly described as someone who turns the hearts of the fathers to the children and the heart of the children to their fathers, what did Matthew say? Check Matthew 10, 34 to 37. Matthew chapter 10, 34 to 37. Think not that I have come to send peace on earth. I came not to send peace, but a sword. For I have come to set a man against his father, and the daughter against her mother, and the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and a man's enemies shall be they of his own household. He that loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and he that loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Even if you just took that on its own, that's not a very nice thing for a Messiah to say. Making enemies of your own family. Oh, Rabbi, you don't understand. This really means the effect of Jesus. I mean, Rabbi, how would you feel if one of your children converted out of Judaism? Well, that's not what it says. It doesn't say the effect of me might cause discord in families. Jesus said in verse 34 of Matthew 10, I have come to bring a sword. I came not to send peace, but a sword. That means his purpose, not his effect, his purpose in coming was to disrupt families. Okay? Malachi tells us that Elijah returns, precedes the coming of the Messiah. Although Jesus claimed that John the Baptist was Elijah, Elias in our translation, John the Baptist didn't know that he was supposed to be Elijah instead. Matthew chapter 11, verse 12 to 14, from the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven suffered violence, and the violent take it by force. For all the prophets and the law prophesied until John, and if you will receive it, this is Elijah, which was for to come. But, and that's Matthew 11, 12 to 14, but in Gospel of John chapter 1, verse 19 to 21, it says, and this is the record of John the Baptist, when the Jews sent priests and Levites from Jerusalem to ask him, who are you? And he confessed and denied not, but confessed, I am not the Messiah, I'm not the Christ. And they asked him, what then? Are you Elijah? And he said, I am not. And he said, are you that prophet? And he answered, no. So Jesus said Elijah the prophet was John the Baptist, but John the Baptist in the Gospel of John chapter 1 says he's not. You would think that he would know who he is? Okay. Even though John the Baptist baptized Jesus, instantly recognizing Jesus as the Messiah, as little as 8 chapters later, still in Matthew, John the Baptist was unsure. So he recognizes John the Baptist recognizes Jesus as being the Messiah, and 8 chapters later has to send and find out if he really is. Check Matthew chapter 3, verse 13 to 15. The Matthew chapter 3, 13 to 15. Okay? John was reluctant to baptize Jesus because he recognized who Jesus was. Then comes Jesus from Galilee to Jordan unto John to be baptized of him. But John forbade him, saying, I have need to be baptized by you, and you come to me? And Jesus answered and said to him, allow it to be so now, for thus it becomes us to fulfill all righteousness. Then he allowed him. But in Matthew chapter 11, 8 chapters later, verses 2 to 3, John must have forgotten that he had earlier recognized Jesus as the expected Messiah. Matthew 11, 2 to 3. Now, when John had heard in the prison the works of Christ, of the Messiah, he sent 2 of his disciples and said to him, are you he that should come, or do we look for another? Must have had amnesia. Okay, next. What's the Messiah supposed to do when he gets here? King David's dynasty is supposed to be reestablished through the Messiah's own children, who reigns over all the earth. In order to reestablish King David's dynasty and to allow that dynasty to carry on when the Messiah, human being, like any other human being, dies, the Messiah has to have children who will rule after the Messiah's death. Daniel chapter 7, verse 13 to 14. I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him, and there was given to him dominion and glory and a kingdom that all people, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. Wait a minute. If Jesus is God, and God owns the universe, how can you give to Jesus dominion and glory and a kingdom? Wouldn't he already have it? And if it says all people, nations, and languages should serve him, I recall that Jesus said something like, I came not to be served, but to serve everybody else. Presumably, I guess, by dying for their sins. But here it says all people, nations, and languages should serve the Messiah. Jesus said he came not to be served by everybody, but to serve them. Jesus knew Jesus wasn't the Messiah. Okay. And Jesus never had children through which this dynasty could have been reestablished. Okay. You ask anybody who's Jewish, what does the Messiah do when he gets here? The one and only thing they know is that the Messiah is supposed to bring peace. Not just peace between nations, but peace between all peoples, and even peace between all individuals. So we already had this verse. Okay, let's look at it again. Isaiah chapter 2, verse 2 through 4. And it shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain of the Eternal's house shall be established in the top of the mountains and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it. Okay, maybe this is new. And many people shall go and say, come ye and let us go up to the mountain of the Eternal, to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law, and the word of the Eternal from Jerusalem. And he shall judge among the nations, and shall rebuke many people, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. Absolute peace. Micah chapter 4, verse 1 through 4. But in the last days it shall come to pass that the mountain of the house of the Eternal shall be established in the top of the mountains, and it shall be exalted above the hills, and people shall flow to it. And many nations shall come and say, come, let us go up to the mountain of the Eternal, to the house of the God of Jacob. And he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For the law shall go forth out of Zion, and the word of the Eternal from Jerusalem. And he shall judge among many people, and rebuke strong nations far off. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. But they shall set every man under his vine and under his fig tree, and none shall make them afraid, for the mouth of the Eternal of hosts has spoken it. All peoples, all nations, and all individuals as well. No peace. Ezekiel 39:9. And they that dwell in the cities of Israel shall go forth and shall set on fire and burn the weapons, both the shields and the bucklers, the bows and the arrows and the handstaves and the spears, and they shall burn them with fire 7 years. It takes 7 years to get rid of all the weapons of the world, and they won't be needed anymore because we won't be fighting with each other. Peace is not reality. There is no peace. Jesus said in Matthew 10:34, which we talked about, that his purpose in coming was to bring the sword and not peace. Okay? You take a look at the Jewish service. Take a look at the Siddur, the Jewish prayer book. How often do we use the word peace? We want peace. Okay? How often does it indicate that peace is paramount and is prayed for often within the traditional Jewish prayer book. No peace, since Jesus said he never intended to bring peace, he clearly wasn't the Messiah. The world becomes vegetarian. You know, if you can't have violence, how do you eat meat? Because that requires you to kill the animal, and that means violence is done against it in taking its life and slaughtering it. So all human beings and all animals become vegetarians. Isaiah 11:6-9. The wolf shall dwell with the lamb, the leopard shall lie down with the kid, and the calf and the young lion and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them. And the cow and the bear shall feed, their young ones shall lie down together, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox. And the sucking child shall play on the hole of the asp, and the weaned child shall put his hand on the cockatrice adder's den. They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain, for the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the eternal as the waters cover the sea. All weapons of war are destroyed. We already had this. Ezekiel 39:9. And they that dwell in the cities of Israel shall go forth and shall set on fire and burn the weapons, both the shields and the bucklers, the bows and the arrows, and the handstaves and the spears, and they shall burn them with fire 7 years. But also Ezekiel 39:12. And 7 months shall the house of Israel be buried of them, that they may cleanse the land. Now, another thing the real Messiah will do when the real Messiah comes, non-Jews will come to Judaism, or at least they will come to monotheism, the idea that there's only one God, that our God is God. When the Messiah comes, God will establish a new covenant with the Jews that will differ from the previous covenants. The existing covenant requires that people look to the Bible to learn what God wants from them. The new covenant will exist within our hearts, so that all we must do is look within ourselves and we will know what God wants from us. God will already have planted there what he wants from people, and missionizing will be unnecessary because all people will inherently know God. So, look, we're not going to get into this. It's later in my book, but Christian missionaries usually refer to Jeremiah 31:31 following, because it uses the term New Covenant, and they'll say, "Oh, New Covenant, New Testament. That's Christianity." They forget to read the rest of it. Jeremiah 31, verse 31-34. Actually, it starts in 27, but for right now, this is what we'll look at. Behold, the days come, saith the Eternal, that I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day that I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, which my covenant they broke, although I was a husband unto them, says the Eternal. But this shall be the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel. After those days, saith the Eternal, I will put my law in their inward parts and write it on their hearts, and will be their God, and they shall be my people. And they shall teach no more every man his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, Know God, know the Eternal, for they shall all know me, from the least of them to the greatest of them, says the Eternal. For I will forgive their sin, and I will remember their sin no more. As long as Christians missionize other peoples, including the Jews, to their Christianity, they are admitting that this new covenant has not yet begun, has not taken place. Verse 34 explicitly says they're not going to have to teach anybody to know God, because the whole universe will know God. So if Christians are missionizing us, telling us that we're supposed to know their God, which is Jesus, it's an admission that this new covenant hasn't happened yet. And who is the covenant with? Verse 31, I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel, with the house of Judah. House of Judah is the northern kingdom. House of Judah is the southern kingdom, reunited. It's still with the Jews. Every covenant that God establishes reaffirms and reestablishes all the covenants that God made before us. Okay? Christians believe that the verses from Jeremiah 31:31 and following are a prophecy of the Christian New Testament. But if the new covenant already existed today, why are they missionizing? People would not have to read the Bible, or for that matter, any book, because they'd already know what God wants from them, would be in their heart, just as the paragraph states. Okay? Anyway, next thing, universal recognition that God, our God, Jewish idea of God, actually is God. So, book of Isaiah, okay, 11:9, Isaiah 11, verse 9. They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain, for the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Eternal, as the waters cover the sea. In the same way the bottom of the sea is covered by water, knowledge of God will cover all people all over the earth. Zechariah 14:9, and the Eternal shall be king over all the earth. In that day shall there be one Eternal, and his name one. Okay, people get surprised by this verse from Zechariah 14:16. It says that when the real Messiah comes, the whole world's going to be celebrating Sukkot. Zechariah 14:16, and it shall come to pass that everyone that is left of all the nations which came against Jerusalem shall even go up from year to year to worship the King, the Eternal of hosts, and to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. That's why a lot of churches all of a sudden started celebrating Sukkot, because they realized, oh my God, if we believe the Messiah has come already, and after the real Messiah comes, we're supposed to be celebrating Sukkot, we better start celebrating Sukkot to show that we really believe the Messiah came. Okay, Jews are sought out for spiritual guidance. After the Messiah arrives, all nations of the earth will look to the Jews for spiritual advice. Zechariah 8:23, thus says the Eternal of hosts, in those days it shall come to pass that 10 men shall take hold out of all languages of the nations, even shall take hold of the skirt of him that is a Jew, saying, we will go with you, for we have heard that God is with you. There's an end to all forms of idolatry. Zechariah 13:2. And it shall come to pass in that day, says the Eternal of hosts, that I will cut off the names of the idols out of the land, and they shall no more be remembered. And also I will cause the prophets and the unclean spirit to pass out of the land. The world's still steeped in idolatry. The Messiah hasn't come. There's an ingathering of the 12 tribes. The Messiah will take the Jews from the scattered parts of the world, bring them into the land, the promised land, given to us by God, land of Israel. Ezekiel 36:24, for I will take you from among the heathen and gather you out of all countries and will bring you into your own land. Isaiah 43:5-6, fear not, for I am with you. I will bring your seed from the east and gather you from the west. I will say to the north, give up, and to the south, keep not back. Bring my sons from far and my daughters from the ends of the earth. You know, most of the 10 tribes remain lost, and not all Jews live in Israel. The Messiah hasn't come yet. The temple is supposed to be rebuilt. The temple first built by King Solomon, destroyed by the Babylonians, rebuilt under Cyrus of Persia, who was a Messiah, by the way, but again, and is called that in the Bible, but again destroyed by the Romans, is going to be rebuilt. Isaiah 2:2 had this already. It shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain of the Eternal's house shall be established in the top of the mountains, exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it. But you also have this in Ezekiel 37. This is Ezekiel 37, verse 26. Moreover, I will make a covenant of peace with them. It shall be an everlasting covenant with them, and I will place them and multiply them, and will set my sanctuary in the midst of them forever. My tabernacle also shall be with them. Yea, I will be their God, and they shall be my people. And the heathen shall know that I, the Eternal, sanctifies Israel, when my sanctuary shall be in the midst of them forever. Temple hasn't been rebuilt. The Messiah hasn't come yet. All famine worldwide never happens again. Famines cease to exist. Ezekiel 36:29-30. And I will also save you from all your uncleanness, and I will call for the corn and will increase it and lay no famine upon you. And I will multiply the fruit of the tree and the increase of the field, that you will receive no more reproach of famine among the heathen. People continue to starve every single day. The Messiah has not yet come. Death ceases to exist. At some point after the Messiah comes, death will stop occurring, and there will be a final judgment of all people. Isaiah 25, verse 8. He will swallow up death in victory, and the eternal God will wipe away tears from all faces, and the rebuke of his people shall he take away from off all the earth, for the eternal has spoken it. Yeah, people continue to die every day. The Messiah hasn't come. The dead eventually will be resurrected. Prophet Isaiah knows that resurrection of the dead will not take place during his own life, but he explains that dead men, including himself, will one day live again. Isaiah 26, verse 19. Isaiah 26:19. Your dead men shall live. Together with my dead body shall they arise. Awake and sing, you that dwell in dust, for your dew is as the dew of herbs, and the earth shall cast out the dead. No resurrection of the dead hasn't happened yet. The Messiah has not yet come. Now, in the following quotation, Daniel speaks of a final judgment that, according to Judaism, does not refer to hell. The shame and contempt which he refers does not mean eternal suffering and torture. For example, hate to use this, but it works, so I'll use it. Adolf Hitler is a name thought of with everlasting contempt. He does not suffer eternal torture, but his name, his image, his life is the epitome of what other human beings should not do. So Daniel 12:2, and many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. Even today, how many years after Hitler's dead and buried do we hold him in contempt? Forever he will be held in contempt. Ezekiel 37:12-13, therefore prophesy and say to them, thus says the eternal God, behold, O my people, I will open your graves and cause you to come up out of your graves and bring you into the land of Israel, and you shall know that I am the eternal when I have opened your graves, O my people, and brought you up out of your graves. And Isaiah 43:5-6, fear not, for I am with you. I will bring your seed from the east and gather thee from the west. I will say to the earth, give up, and to the south, keep not back. Bring my sons from far and my daughters from the ends of the earth. We had Isaiah 43:5-6 before. Here they're applying the meaning of this to the idea of resurrection. All other nations help the Jews materially. When the Messiah comes, the nations of the earth give to the Jews wealth, kind of like the Egyptians gave of their wealth to the Hebrew slaves at the Exodus. Isaiah 60:5-6, and then later 10-12. Then you shall see and flow together, and your heart shall fear and be enlarged, because the abundance of the sea shall be converted unto you. The forces of the Gentiles shall come to you. The multitude of camels shall cover you, and dromedaries of Midian and Ephah. All they from Sheba shall come. They shall bring gold and incense, and they shall show forth the praises of the Eternal. And then, as I said, still Isaiah 60, but now it's 10-12. And the sons of strangers shall build up your walls, and their kings shall minister unto you. For in my wrath I smote you, but in my favor have I had mercy on you. This is Isaiah 60. You can talk about all the prophets cursing the Jews, but ultimately every prophet says that God will ultimately forgive us and raise us back to our highest. Verse 11. Therefore your gates shall be open continually, they shall not be shut day or night, that men may bring unto you the forces of the Gentiles, and that their kings may be brought. For the nations and kingdom that will not serve you shall perish, those nations shall be utterly wasted. Isaiah 61:6, but you shall be named the priests of the Eternal, men shall call you the ministers of our God. You shall eat the riches of the Gentiles, and in their glory shall you boast yourselves. The Jewish people are characterized by eternal gladness and joy. Isaiah 51:11. Therefore the redeemed of the Eternal shall return and come with singing unto Zion, and everlasting joy shall be upon their head. They shall obtain gladness and joy, and sorrow and mourning shall flee away. Yeah, we'll remember things like the Holocaust and the pogroms and the Spanish Inquisition and the Crusades and all the bad things that have been done to us, but we're not going to be characterized by crying and weeping and wailing. We're going to be characterized by our joy at knowing God. Hasn't happened yet. Messiah hasn't come. The Egyptian river runs dry. Isaiah 11:15. The Eternal shall utterly destroy the tongue of the Egyptian sea, and with his mighty wind shall he shake his hand over the river, and shall smite it in the seven streams, and the many men shall go over it dry shod. Eventually, trees will yield their fruit monthly in Israel, Ezekiel 47:12, and by the river upon the bank thereof, and on this side and on that side, shall grow all trees for meat, whose leaves shall not fade, neither shall the fruit thereof be consumed. It shall bring forth new fruit according to its months, because their waters they issued out of the sanctuary, and the fruit thereof shall be for meat, and the leaf thereof for medicine. Each tribe of Israel will receive its inheritance. Each tribe will go back to that part of the promised land that was promised to them and to their descendants, their promise to the ancestors, which means them. Ezekiel 47:13-14. Thus says the eternal God, this shall be the border whereby you shall inherit the land according to the 12 tribes of Israel. Joseph shall have two portions, Ephraim and Manasseh, and you shall inherit it, one as well as another, concerning that which I lifted up my hand to give it unto your ancestors, and this land shall fall unto you for an inheritance. All nations on earth will recognize that what they have done to the Jews has been sinning against the Jews. The nations of the earth will recognize that they have been wrong, that the Jews have been right all along, that the sins of the Gentile nations, their persecutions and murdering Jews, which they, the Gentiles, have committed, their sins have been borne by the Jewish people. It's shown by the famous passage of Isaiah 53, and it's discussed in length in my book. But that's not our thing right now. So again, these are most of the things, not all of them, that make up the job description of the Messiah. What's he going to do when he comes? What's the job for which he was anointed in the first place? The things which will happen when the real Messiah really comes. None of them have happened yet, which means the Messiah has not yet come. And as I said, even Christians recognize that none of this has happened. That's why they invented the idea of a second coming. The real Messiah has no need to come a second time to do the things he was supposed to do the first time around. The real Messiah accomplishes all these things in his own lifetime. Again, keep in mind what I said at the beginning, okay? The electrician comes into your home, changes absolutely nothing, and then leaves. The Jews created the term Messiah. The Jews defined the term. And as we already talked about, for anyone else to come to the Jews and say that this definition is incorrect, then the Messiah has to die for our sins, which is an unbiblical concept we've already discussed. That's like somebody who doesn't speak English saying that an electrician is a person who repairs plumbing. Not true, never has been true. Messiah is our word. They don't have the right to tell us we're wrong. The end.
Absolutely fantastic.
Hope that wasn't too long.
No, not at all. It was an hour and 10 minutes. Not a big deal. We've gone an hour and a half, hour 45 before. So
all right.
Definitely no sweating it at all. And it was so concentrated and so full that it was worth every minute for sure.
I can only hope.
Yeah, no doubt. This will be a good video for you guys to share with your friends and family member who are still stuck in the church for sure. So
right.
Unless
who's the Messiah and what is he supposed to do when he gets here?
Right on.
Yep.
All right, Rabbi. Thank you for your time. That was amazing. Great job as usual. And we'll see you same time, same place next week.
Absolutely.
You all take care. Take care. Bye-bye.
Hello, my dear friends. Hope this message finds you well. If you like the way this channel is going and the channel has been a blessing to you, please consider supporting the channel by going to the website, TaNaChTalk.com. TaNaChTalk.com. Thank you once again for your time and for supporting TaNaCh Talk. Shalom.
תמיד כולם ביחד, חשוב מכל חשוב והכרחי להיות ביחד. איפוק זו העוצמה, ויתור זו הגדולה, השאיפה